32 male, wife Fiona, 30F, and I have been married 5 years and started exploring kink and ENM a couple of years ago. We got really into shibari and have done some full suspensions as my skill level has increased. We have some CNC and light sensation play and flogging, but I have never been comfortable with impact play or more extreme pain play. Fiona met Tim 40M at a kink event and they started doing scenes together. At first it was non-sexual, but that changed over time. Tim did things I couldn't and Fiona enjoyed the new experiences and they see each other once a week. In the 7 months they have been playing together it has gotten more extreme and is not only worrying me but it has affected our relationship and our intimacy. For example, 1. We made plans to go to a kink convention in another city, hotel, pre-registered for a pricey shibari class. We get there and are checking things out when we run into Tim and he just happened to bring her collar. She wanted to show him an exhibit and I reminded her we had a 2 p.m. class to go to. No problem, she said. She missed the class and didn't show up till 7 p.m., still wearing her collar which has a lock on it. He took it off the next morning before he left. 2. The two of us were invited to a pool party and I asked if she could refrain from getting marked up before the party. The Thursday before the party she came home with her breasts and legs heavily bruised. No way a swimsuit could hide those marks. We ended up not going after some heated words. 3. In June, the day after she came back from his house we were cuddling and I tried to finger her on the couch and she was spotting blood and extremely tender. She ended up at the doctor and she had 2 small vaginal tears and a larger one deeper inside that almost needed sutures. The doctor said no sex for 4 weeks and if the bleeding didn't stop they would have to suture it. This caused a major fight when I said she needed to not see Tim for at least 4 weeks or until she healed completely. It was closer to 5 before we could have sex again. Final straw was 2 weeks ago. We had a Vegas getaway planned complete with show tickets to one of her favorite artists. Once again I asked she not have a bunch of bruises before the trip and be able to have some intimate time while we were gone. I don't know if they did it on purpose but she had several marks that would be visible on the trip. I told her the day before the trip I had reached the breaking point and something had to change. I told her I was going to Vegas alone since she had ignored my request. She was mad but didn't argue much and I blocked her number during the trip. In June I put my foot down when she wanted to wear her day collar on one of our date nights. I ended up telling her if she wore it around me I would cut it into little pieces. We have had several discussions about boundaries and how unhappy I've been since at least 3 days a week she doesn't want intimacy due to her sessions with Tim. She has argued that it is all consensual and she enjoys the sessions so much. I have asked that she limit their sessions to every other week and that we see a counselor to work through our/my issues but she refuses to consider it. We never had a veto agreement in our relationship but I am thinking using a veto on Tim. Some friends of mine have discouraged me from giving her an ultimatum like that. I guess I could phrase it like I can't be in a relationship where my feelings and needs are ignored like this either way. As much as it would hurt I can't live this way anymore. If it means splitting up then I am at that point. I know if I draw a line in the sand I have to be prepared to follow through. I just had a talk with my lawyer this morning to go over my options and get a roadmap if I decide this is my only option. I love my wife but this is just tearing me apart. I hope she feels the same and we can fix this. FYI, I have another partner I see 2 to 3 times a month so this isn't a one-sided arrangement. Formatting on my iPad blows. I will clean it up when I get home. Edit, formatting only update 1. Fiona and I had a long talk tonight. She sat and heard me out for the most part. I tried to make it about how I was feeling and what I felt was missing in our relationship. Fiona actually apologized and said she was still very much in love with me and cared a lot about our marriage and would make an effort to be more mindful of my needs and feelings. But, said she would not allow me to dictate the terms of her relationship with Tim as it is also very important to her. I said I couldn't see the two relationships being compatible, especially from my point of view. Things went downhill from there. I finally said we needed to separate for a while until we could figure out if we wanted to work on saving the marriage or simply call it quits. I suggested she go stay with a friend or relative while we thought this out. Her response was to call my bluff, saying she wasn't going to let me manipulate her into giving in to my demands. She wasn't leaving and said I had no intention of divorcing her. I told her I had already spoken with an attorney and was deadly serious, which she called BS on. She grabbed some things and went into the guest room and shut the door. Crap will hit the fan tomorrow as I am following instructions from my lawyer. I transferred the money from the checking account into a different account and then called the debit and credit cards in as lost and had them issue new cards with new account numbers. They said it would take 6 to 8 business days for our new cards to arrive. I also changed all the passwords on our accounts. Tomorrow I plan to get a storage unit and start moving some of my things out of the apartment. And of course, call the lawyer and give him the green light to have Fiona served. She doesn't carry much cash so I should be getting a call early tomorrow after she leaves. I'll be leaving before she does for work tomorrow so I will miss her reaction if she decides to wear her day collar, which is in 3 pieces now. Update 2. Brief recap. My wife of 5 years got into her first BDSM relationship with heavy impact play, something I wasn't comfortable doing, and loved it, but it got out of hand and began to bleed over into our relationship. None of my requests or boundaries were listened to and there were several major red flags events that finally became too much for me. Earlier this week we had a long discussion where she heard my concerns and acted like she wanted to try and make things better, but in almost the same breath said that her relationship with Tim, her dom, was equally important and she wouldn't let me dictate terms of their relationship. I said I felt the two relationships were not compatible and we should separate for a while to figure out if we wanted to work on saving our marriage or simply call it quits. Her response was to call my bluff in her words and she wasn't going to let me manipulate her into giving in to my demands. She said she wasn't leaving and I had no intention of divorcing her. I told her I was deadly serious and had already talked with a lawyer, which she called BS on. She grabbed some things and shut herself up in the guest room. I reported all our cards as lost and had them frozen and requested cards with new numbers. I also changed the passwords on all our accounts and moved our checking balance to a savings account. There was a substantial amount in the account that I wanted to preserve in case she decided to do something rash. I gave the lawyer a green light to have her served. I also rented a storage unit and moved a lot of my valuables and keepsakes just in case. I had already pulled about $2,000 in cash out to get by until the new cards arrived in about 7 business days. I also took a pair of snips to her day collar and cut it into 3 pieces. She called me from Starbucks asking why none of her cards were working the next morning and I told her what I had done. She said we needed to talk when she got home and I said we had already had a talk but wasn't listening to me. When she got home she saw her day collar sitting on the dining room table in pieces and started going off on me. I let her vent and when she asked if I had anything to say I told her I was tired of having it shoved in my face all the time. While I was telling her off she noticed several things missing around the apartment and I said I had put them in safekeeping for now. I told her she needed to set up a checking account and get her paychecks direct deposit routed there and once she had it set up then I would transfer money from our joint account. She asked what was she supposed to live on till that happened and I said you can ask Tim for a loan since he is your new primary now. Then I said if you need some cash I can give you enough to get by until you get things changed over. I said she wasn't going to run up any more debt on the credit cards and she should apply for one if she thought she couldn't live without one. I said my lawyer said you should get served on Friday and you should look into getting someone to represent you. She grabbed her purse and said you're insane, I can't be here right now and headed towards the door. She stopped halfway and turned around and said she needed gas money. I handed her $100 and she stormed out. She came back in about an hour and said I couldn't do this and we needed to talk. I went through all the red flags again that I had listed in the first post and said I wouldn't live like this anymore. She doesn't want to separate or get a divorce and now wants to get marriage counseling. I said I would do counseling if she stopped seeing Tim until things were settled. She blew up and said I didn't get to make that call and I agreed and said that was her call but I wouldn't entertain counseling while she was still seeing Tim. Thursdays are their normal play night, tonight, and she wanted to go talk with him in person first if she was going to pause their relationship. I put my foot down and said she could do that over the phone and if she went over to his house to go ahead and pack her bags and just stay there. I said if she showed up with a new bruise then we were done, no second chances. We have an appointment with a counselor next week. He is kink friendly and came recommended from several people. I told her counseling doesn't change the divorce decision, and if we are to cohabituate and try to rebuild something I needed to be legally free to walk away if things go bad again. She didn't like this and argued we could maybe work that out in our counseling session. Sorry for the long read. I will see if she is committed to what she says she will do, but it seems like she is only 80% on board and keeps waffling on the details. Maybe when she gets served she will make up her mind. Either way I am staying the course on the divorce, no matter what direction things go. Thanks for everybody's support and advice. She also called Tim and canceled their playdate for tonight and said they were taking a break. We have an appointment with a therapist next week. For now, she is still sleeping in the guest room. Update 3. Tim has reached out to me twice now so I had a decent conversation with him today. I voiced some of my concerns and things I felt he disrespected by doing. He apologized for the incident at the kink event but didn't realize I didn't know he was attending as well. The collar incident was mostly Fiona's idea and he had not intended for her to keep it on all night. He was not aware of the pool party incident but had tried to limit bruising before our trip to Vegas. He seemed remorseful that he had caused so much turmoil in Fiona and my relationship. While he did admit to going too far a few times, he said he had to end several of their sessions because of the lack of Fiona's own limits and that she had only used her safe word once in their relationship. He told me he was afraid she might allow herself to get injured badly if she continued on like she had been. He told me he was not going to see her again for several reasons. He also asked if she would reach out to him so he could explain. Tim rents dungeon space from a local pro-dom, who has a large space that rents to locals. She has suspended his privileges there for 60 days. Not sure if it is related to us or not. I do know the dom and have attended private events there before. Our second counseling session went well. Fiona has her first individual session with a different therapist today. I have been impressed by the effort and attitude she is putting into therapy. Divorce is still on track. Her lawyer met with mine this morning. She is not contesting the divorce and our financials are already separated. Our 401ks were almost equal so there is nothing there to split. Both lawyers think we can expedite things rather quickly. Our lease is up in November and by that time we should know if we plan to continue to cohabitate. Fiona doesn't know yet about my conversation with Tim. She says she hasn't reached out to him, which he confirmed in our talk. We did sleep in the same bed last night and were intimate for the first time in a long while. In the letter she wrote to me from our first session was that she might want a different relationship going forward, possibly a 24/7 DS arrangement, but we are still talking about what that might look like. While this update sounds all happily ever after, I still have a lot of concerns and trust issues. So I went to the event center where our kink event is planned for tonight to help with some setup, and found out details about the dungeon debacle. Tim had assault charges filed against him and police went to the dungeon space to investigate, which disrupted some business the owner was doing there at the time. Tim had a sub file charges against him and has threatened to sue the owner of the dungeon as well. The dom that owns the space suspended his privileges there for 60 days and it will result in a permanent ban if he can't make all this go away. I know there are multiple waivers and consent forms that everyone who enters that space has to sign, so the lawsuit will likely go away. But I'm sure the owner isn't happy about having her business on the police and community's radar. I was inundated with questions last night from people wondering if I was involved due to recent events and my pending divorce. A couple of people even suggested I should reach out to the dungeon owner to voice my opinion on Tim. At any rate, it doesn't appear that our situation was the reason for him losing his privileges and he is just trying to put out fires at this point. Now on to second story. Husband would rather sacrifice me and my daughter than his beloved dogs, leaving me questioning his priorities and our marriage. My husband is watching 2, out of 4, of his parents' golden retrievers during Christmas. So 2 of them are here at our apartment. They are old and sweet and one of them can barely walk. I've always loved his parents' dogs, and I love on them when they are here. The other night, though, he let me know that it is priority that the dogs, well, mainly one dog since the other can't get on there, get to sleep on the bed, and I'll either need to sleep on the guest bed or move my legs for the dog. I asked why they couldn't sleep on the guest bed or floor or literally anywhere else. He said because they are used to always sleeping with him. He was single and living with his parents until he met me at age 34, so the dogs slept on his bed highly and were his rock. We got married last February and he left the dogs at his parents'. It's a queen bed and the golden is huge, so he takes up most of it. He also won't move when gently pushed, and like to place himself in the middle of the complete left side of the bed. My husband told me not to make him move or shove him, but to work around him. When I gently laid my leg on top of the dog, he said it was too heavy for the dog. I'm thin and my leg is very light, mind you. My husband hen got to sleep stretched out on his bed. The first morning I woke up on my side wanting to die. The dog's massive weight had contorted the bed in just enough of a way to bend my back backwards and make me think I was literally having a double kidney infection. I must have slept in a semi-back bend position all night. Last night I asked him to switch places with me, and he did so to prove a point. 5 minutes after laying on the gravity-inducing sinking hole of the dog's half of the bed, my husband wails in pain like something sharp had stabbed him in the back. He changed positions, but I insisted he sleep on the dog's side with the dog because I was so sore. Before we went to sleep, I was listening to him whisper sweet nothings to the dogs. I'm not the weird jealous type over dogs. I grew up with 2 Goldens and a Shih Tzu and I truly adore dogs. But he wouldn't even touch me when they are around. They 100% fill his emotional cup. Sometimes we will be out at a restaurant or something and he'll stare off with teary eyes. When I ask what's up, he says he misses his dogs. Multiple times I will ask him what he's in deep thought about, and he says his dogs. I asked him if he wanted to snuggle and he said no. He kept making comments about how he's sad his dogs don't have more room. I've noticed I've had this increasing awareness that he might 100% value his dogs more than me. I explained this away to myself as being logical as we've only been married since February. For context, I grew up always putting others first and valuing myself as less inherently than those around me. Church taught me that God wants us to put others before ourselves and I spiraled. This seems silly, but an example of this is that I would show up to church with my family and there would be 1 donut left, my blood sugar was routinely low and I'd help my 3 little brothers get ready so I didn't have time to eat. I would let whatever old person have the last donut and I would go completely sweaty and blackout, but this was the extreme fear I developed of ever putting myself first. Back to the scene in bed, I finally said, kind of joking, that I feel sometimes like he loves his dogs more than me. He got quiet. Like I said, I was kind of joking at first, but his silence was silent. I said, oh my God, do you? Silence. Are you serious? He finally sighed and said, well, they are my babies. They're my everything. I was completely silent. Stunned. I'm also aware that love for dogs and human love are not the easiest things to have compared in a question like this, but it seems he wasn't aware of that, 'cause the boy knew how to answer. I asked if he was serious and he said yes. I pushed it further because of course I did. I had to know the extent of this unsettling answer. I asked if a gun was to either my head or the dogs' heads, would he choose me or the dogs? He got quiet again and told me that's not a fair question because that would never happen. WTF, so I insisted on my hypothetical question because now I was just shell-shocked. He finally admitted that he would choose to let me die over dogs. Oh, and my daughter. His stepdaughter. He said he'd choose to let both me and my daughter die. Over his parents' dogs. I was visibly upset and shocked at how serious he was answering. I said, do you even love me? He got quiet. I asked again. Silence. He could see I was horrified and tearing up. He finally got annoyed and said of course he does. And that he only hesitated because it was a stupid question. He then said he was kidding about the dog stuff and only answered that way to show me those were stupid questions. Only guys, he wasn't kidding. I really believe no part of that was a joke. I know joking. He was not kidding, at all. Update 1. Bad update 2. My husband said that if he ever had to choose to let either me or his parents' dogs live, he'd choose the dogs, so now I want to leave Ada? I had posted all of this on True Off My Chest and it got deleted, so I'm trying here because the comments were helping, so I've been reading all of your comments and obviously gaslighting myself on if he was joking. He doubled down yesterday morning and said he only answered that way because I was being ridiculous. I still felt uneasy about everything. Last night, I was like sick exhausted. My throat was swollen, my back hurt, and I had gotten 2 hours of sleep the night before. When I went to go to sleep, this time both dogs were on the bed. I asked if we could lift the dog that can't walk well to the floor since that's where he likes to sleep as he can't get on or off the bed alone. He got up to try to gently move him to the floor, but the golden didn't much prefer it, so my husband instantly gave up. Now mind you, the dog is literally taking up the lower left corner, 1/4 or more of the bed. I asked if he could gently insist the dog get on the floor. He explained that he will need to move to the floor later in the night, but he doesn't feel like it currently, so no, he wouldn't be making him move right now if the pup didn't delight in the thought right this instance. The dog got to stay. I said this makes no sense to me because you'll have to wake up from us sleeping to move him later? He doubled down. I focused on the second dog who was stretched out to consume the entire right half of the bed. My husband laid between them, spooning him. That left a small 2 feet by 3 feet area in the upper left corner of the bed for me, and I wasn't allowed to accidentally let my foot touch them in a way that could put pressure on them. Obviously I lost my shit at this point. Having read most of your comments, I started telling him this was insane, to grow up, to actually put me first, or go marry your dogs. I said this is so pathetic and embarrassing for me to be of less value than your dogs do you. You can't put your golden through slight discomfort and move them to the floor so your sick wife can sleep? He responds with, move to the guest room. I said no. He says fine, I'll move to the guest room. I said I really want to actually spend time with you since my kiddo is out of town. We never spend time together. Let's both go to the guest room and the dogs can have our bed. He says no, it has to be just one of us, because he wants the dogs to have one adult as a comfort presence, and both have full access to the bed. I obviously am floored at this point. Around this time the dog that sleeps on the floor somehow moved himself off the bed to the floor, even though I didn't think he could without help due to his hips. My husband notices and instantly freaks out asking if I made the dog get off the bed. I said no. He then says I should leave. I'm insane, he wants a divorce, and they will always be more important to him. He slept holding them so gently and scrumptiously. So that's the story of how I'm sitting upstairs trying to figure out how to pack my stuff and leave to spend Christmas Eve and Christmas alone. Because I'm less than 2 dogs. Oh, and it's storming outside. The actual reason I haven't left my husband, the one who would choose the dogs over me, is I feel too guilty because I think he's autistic. Ada? Hi, I just wrote the 2 posts about how my husband, given the choice between letting me or his parents' dogs live, would choose his dogs. I don't even know how to write this next part because it sounds so bad in every way. Someone commented on one of the posts saying they think he's 100% autistic. One of my close friends is autistic and I've learned a lot from them. I'm fully aware there is a spectrum. I also want to say that I used to be a terrible anti-vaxxer and then saw the light, and now speak at events against ableism and advocate against the notion of vaccines causing autism. I am constantly grateful by the absolute gift to the universe my autistic friends are, and I am humbled I get to learn from them. My husband has never been diagnosed as autistic. Please forgive me because I don't know if it's preferred to say autistic or having autism, and my heart is in the right place. I just truly don't know what the preferred term is because people have told me a few different preferences over the years. Possibly relevant side note, I have AD and am medicated, and they think I have auditory processing disorder. I have PTSD and anxiety as well. I'm actually really struggling with this comment, because I've always wondered if he was autistic because the things he said to me make me wonder like maybe he doesn't realize his obsession with his dogs to the point of loving them more than me isn't normal. He's very sociable, has a group of friends he plays D&D with, is outgoing with strangers, can strike up conversations easily, has a wide variety of interests, a degree in journalism with a very creative and fun style of writing, is incredibly intelligent, high emotional IQ, connects with others easily, etc. But every time he says something mean like he loves his dogs more than me, I think, what if he's undiagnosed autistic and doesn't know he's hurting me? He says very off-the-wall things that hurt me and are not at all socially acceptable, and genuinely acts like he doesn't see the harm. But then he'll say things like this, actually fully aware that he knows what he's saying is bad. I'm a piece of shit, less intelligent than him, a parasite, infuriating, worthless, everyone can't stand me, no one likes me, I have a peanut for a brain, I'm a ducking idiot, I'm so goddamn stupid, etc. It breaks me. But I stop and think, what if he's autistic and he's projecting feeling like he's inadequate onto me? What if he feels that way about himself and wishes he were neurotypical? And then my heart breaks and I cry. Also, when I tell him he's making me cry, he tells me I cry all the time and that he's just giving me a reason to get it out of the way. I cannot divorce him because I worry he's autistic and can't help the abuse. Today he told me not to be around him because it's impossible for him not to verbally abuse me because I make him have to. At the end of the day I feel sad thinking maybe he feels like a neurodivergent outsider then wants to feel more neurotypical and therefore projects his feelings onto me to feel better about himself. That breaks me. Whenever I stand up for myself and say no, I'm done, He breaks down and needs me, as if I'm a mother abandoning her child. He spent 34 years of his life at home till we married last year. What if there was enmeshment and that's not his fault? What if he was never mentally allowed to grow up? That also breaks me. I feel so sad for him that I feel like I can't divorce him because he's mentally either been abused through enmeshment, or is insecure due to undiagnosed autism. People keep asking why on earth I won't leave him. I don't want to leave him alone in this possible diagnosis, possible childhood trauma, etc. It also feels so guilty if I walk away. That's why. I do love him, but I love my daughter more and I don't want her thinking this is okay. I know what I need to do and I have to go through with a divorce. My heart is just aching and hurting for him.